Okay, everyone, let's go ahead and continue learning SPSS syntax to run linear regression. We are going to pick up where we left off and begin multiple regression, okay? Now, remember, when we are using simple linear regression, we are only looking at one independent variable predicting one dependent variable, okay? That's the nature of simple regression, right? Now, when we want to predict an outcome using multiple independent variables, we implement multiple regression, okay? Now, at the beginning of this semester, I explained to you guys the importance of control variables. Okay, I don't know if you guys remember this, but I was talking about control variables are measures that researchers use to account for individual traits or characteristics, okay? Some of the control variables that we had mentioned were the standard ones like age, marital status, sex, income, education, number of children, even region, etc. Okay, so when we want to account for these factors, we use multiple regression. And the reason why we want to use these predictors is because we want to make sure that the effects that we are seeing are accounting for these types of characteristics that might impact the outcome, right? So after accounting for a person's traits or individual characteristics, we can be sure that the effect of the independent variable on the outcome variable is still valid, okay? Now, let's say that we are picking up from the previous regression models, okay? We want to look at how your religious denomination impacts your religious attendance, okay? So again, how is it that your religious denomination impacts how frequently or how often you attend religious services? We would suspect that the more conservative your religion is, the more frequently you would attend because of the guidelines, right, outlined by these conservative denominations tend to ask a lot from the congregation members, including that they attend regularly to these religious services, okay? All right, but how do we know that the effect that we see between denomination and religious attendance is real? Because all of this can depend on different things like your age. If you're much older, right, it doesn't matter what denomination you identify with. If you're very elderly and unable to leave the house, well, then your religious attendance is not going to be the same as a younger person, right? If you have more children, then depending on your denomination, your attendance might go up or down. We would suspect that people with more children probably attend religious services more than people with less children or no children. So all of these factors can play a part in the relationship between these two variables, and that's why it's important to control for them. Now, for multiple regression, you introduce these variables in steps, okay? So like the previous syntax for simple regression, you want to put your dependent variable here, attendance, okay? Now this first line here, we are going to put in our primary independent variable, which is religious denomination. And again, since it's categorical, we have to insert them as dummies, leaving out the largest group, which are Protestants, okay? Now, after I check the relationship between denomination and attendance, I want to then account for a person's education, their income, and their age, okay? And I want to see how these factors change the relationship between denomination and attendance, okay? And then I finally want to add the rest of the important control variables, like sex, race, marital status, and number of children, okay? So again, we're introducing variables in steps so that we can see how these traits together impact the relationship between denomination and attendance. Again, remember, anytime you are including a variable that is categorical, you need to make sure you create a dummy or dummies for the categories. So what I mean by that is you can't just do this. You can't just do, okay, I want to look at the effects of race, so let me put race here. And I want to look at the effects of marital status, so let me type in marital here. You can't do that because SPSS doesn't know that those are categories. It's going to count it as a continuous measure, unit increases, okay? And there are no related increases between categories. There is no difference between whites, blacks, and others, or not married and married. You have to create dummies for each of their categories, okay? So that would mean putting in black, other race, and leaving out whites as the largest group, and putting in separated, divorced, widowed, never married, and leaving out married as the largest group. And of course, anything that is continuous, you can just stick in as is. Child's number of children is a continuous measure, as is education, income, and age, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and run this. All right, this top window is telling us the different models that we have created, okay? So if you look at the syntax, okay, we have 1, 2, 3 models, okay? 1, 2, and 3 models. The output tells us that. All right, model 1, you included religious denomination categories. Then in model 2, you added income, age, education. And then in the final model, you added sex, race, marital status, and number of children. So it tells you what you've added there. Now, the next window is the model summary when we're looking at the R squared. Okay, so you can see here the 3 models, models 1, 2, and 3. Okay, what we are looking for here is we want to go straight to the R squared. Okay, what we want is this R square value to get bigger as we add variables. Okay, so in model 1, remember, all we have is religious denomination. Model 2, we added income, education, and age. And then the final model, we added the rest of the control variables. The R square should be getting larger as we add more variables, because that means that those variables combined, their effects explain more of the changes in attendance than a model that has a less amount of variables included in it. So we always want to see that as we are adding variables, this R square gets larger. Okay, so this means that, okay, model 3, which includes all of these variables, does a much better job of explaining the changes in religious attendance, okay, than a model that has a fewer amount of control variables. Okay, so again, your R square always needs to get larger as you add more variables. That's how you know that you're going in the right direction, that you are adding the correct variables to explain the outcome variable. Okay, now here's the window that shows us the coefficient results. Okay, and I know this looks scary, believe me, I know, but just bear with me. Okay. Okay, so here you can see model 1, Model 1, and you can see this line here, right above the 2. Okay, so this is showing you Model 1 includes religious denomination. Okay, Catholics, no religion, and other religion. Okay, Model 2 is this section here, okay, where we added, in addition to these 3, education, income, and age. Okay, so you can see that they're getting larger. These little sections are getting larger. Okay, and then Model 3, we have religious denomination, education, income, and age, but we also added sex, race, marital status, and number of children. Okay, so that's what these variables indicate. They indicate the models and what we included in them. Okay, now let's begin with Model 1 here. Okay, let's see if denomination is related to attendance. Okay, we're going to look at these B coefficients here. Okay, they're all negative and they're all statistically significant. So this tells us that these 3 groups, Catholics, no religion, and other religion, they all have decreased levels of religious attendance when compared to Protestants. Okay, because Protestants is the omitted group. So these 3 all have negative values, which means that their levels of religious attendance is less than individuals who identify as Protestants. And is it significant? Yes, it's significant because they all have p-values that are 0.000. Okay? All right, Model 2, we still have denomination here, okay, but we added education, income, and age. So the first thing we want to do is we want to see, okay, does denomination stay significant? We go over here, and yes, they all stayed significant. So that means even when we account for a person's education, income, and age, denomination is still a significant factor in determining their religious attendance. Okay? Now, let's interpret education. Okay? This is a positive coefficient. So for each unit increase in education, there is an associated 0.06 unit increase in religious attendance, and that is statistically significant at the 0.01 level. Okay. Now let's look at income. There is a negative coefficient here. So for each unit increase in income, there is an associated 0.04 unit decrease in religious attendance, and that is statistically significant at the 0.10 level. So what this means is that more income is associated with less religious attendance when you're accounting for everything in this model. Age, it's a positive coefficient and it's very significant. You interpret it as for each unit increase in age, there is an associated 0.013 unit increase in attendance, and that is statistically significant at the 0.01 level. Okay. The final model, we have these same variables, but we've added the ones down here. We want to look at denomination again, still significant, which means that the effects of denomination, even when you account for individual traits, is still a very strong predictor of religious attendance because it stayed significant. So even when you account for a person's education, income, age, race, sex, denomination is still a very strong and significant effect on outcomes of religious attendance. Okay. Education stays the same. Income, it's still negative, but it lost its significance. So this means that when we account for sex, race, and marital status, a person's income is not as important in influencing religious attendance, right, as when you don't account for those things. So again, once you control for these factors, the effect of income is gone. Okay. Age is still significant. Now let's look at sex. When compared to women, men have a 0.32 unit decrease in their level of religious attendance, and that is statistically significant at the 0.05 level. Now let's look at race. Black and other race, remember the omitted group are whites. Both of them have positive coefficients. So the way you would interpret this is when compared to whites, Black respondents have a 0.72 unit increase in their religious attendance. People of other race, when compared to whites, have a 0.98 unit increase in their religious attendance. Now, this makes sense because we know that people, especially African Americans and people of other races, tend to be more religious than whites are. So it makes sense that their levels of religious attendance go up when compared to whites, okay? And that is very significant. Let's look at marital status. All right, both negative. So what this is saying is that when compared to married people, those who are separated, divorced, widowed, and those who have been never married have decreases in their overall level of religious attendance. They are both significant, okay? Now, if we look at the final variable, number of children, we look at the significance level, and it's actually not significant. So what this means is that the number of children a person has when you account for everything else is not a significant predictor of a person's religious attendance, okay? All right, guys. So this concludes the SPSS portion of multiple regression. Be sure to really listen to this video and go over it yourself on SPSS and make sure you have a thorough understanding of not only how to execute regression, but how to interpret the coefficients, okay? I am available if you have any questions. Do your best, work together, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.